Steve, we're back on another episode of the Steel Target Paint Podcast. How you been?
I'm doing great, Jeff. We got a special one today.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We've got Mike Foley, president of the USPSA and the Steel Challenge Shooting Association, back on to talk about distribution of classifications and the changes in the peak times. Mike, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great, fellas.
Well, Mike, you and I, you're still at the 9 Days of Nationals. I just got done. I shot the optics one. It's very busy, so we really appreciate you taking the time to talk Steel Challenge.
No problem at all. I just paused the shooting this afternoon. I told everyone to be real quiet while I was on this phone call and that we'd get back to shooting as soon as we're finished.
Awesome.
Just kidding. They're still shooting.
Well, Mike, you've mentioned to me that on a weekly basis, I think Zach Jones runs your report regarding some of the information about the classifications. Can you share some of that with us?
Absolutely. So, to start, Zach and I were involved heavily in the first change from the old Steel Challenge classification system to the one that we're using today. That benchmark occurred in July of 2016, and the way that Steel Challenge is classified now is based on peak stage times and everyone's percentage to those peak stage times, and those times are set from the Steel Challenge World Speed Shooting Championship with emphasis from other large Tier 3 events where all the pros are. And Jeff, you were a big part of the most recent reset, which we talked about not too long ago on another episode. But I'm happy to report that in July of 2016, we had 3,619 classifications in Steel Challenge. As of this week, we have 15,093, meaning in the last 2 years and 3 months, we grew 11,474 classifications, a 317% growth in just a little over 2 years. It's also interesting to note that Steel Challenge classifications are not a distribution model. When we talk about 95% to be GM, that doesn't mean that the top 5% of competitors are grandmasters. It means that people who are able to shoot consistently within 5% of the peak stage time or to cumulatively add up to within 5% of the peak stage time are grandmasters. It's the same way in USPSA. And so a lot of people miss that point. In USPSA, for example, it's somewhere just under 2% of the active shooting population that have attained the rank of grandmasters. And I see classifiers all the time that have a grandmaster score distribution of 1.87 or 1.9 or 2.1, but it's generally right around 2%. And when people say, well, why don't you move to a distribution model? It's really quite simple. I'm a grandmaster in PCC division in USPSA, and if I shoot on point, I shoot a grandmaster score in a match. If I don't shoot on point, not only in the match but on the classifier, my bad score, if I have a terrible day and shoot 50% and zero half the stages, that score falls within the distribution. So you would have to do a true distribution model. You would have to eliminate scores that fell outside of someone's current classification. And so it's real important to see that what we're measuring is the people who are able to shoot near the top of the game, not the people who are on a moving 5% or moving 15% or moving 25% when you look at the top three classifications.
Well, that's a really good point, Mike, because in the Steel Challenge Shooting Association, you never, other than the reset we're going to do with the peak stage times now, you never drop your percentage. If you get faster and you hit that upper bar, you've now set your upper bar. You can shoot the next 10 times and not make that, and nothing changes. But that's not the same in USPSA. It's the algorithm is set, but it feels like magic, but it's the last 6 of 8, but throw out duplicates and all this kind of stuff. But the point is that you can go down. In fact, I did. I was close to making master in PCC, and then I had some bad classifiers, but they weren't totally bad. They were still within the range of being acceptable. And so my percentage went down a little bit, but that never happens in Steel Challenge. So you're always just improving, but you've got to continue to do that to continually move it up.
Right. It's important to note that both systems do, in fact, ratchet up or level out at some point. In USPSA, as you mentioned, if you're competing constantly more than 5% below your classification level, that doesn't count against you. If you have a bad day, that doesn't count against you. So while you can lower your percentage, you can't lower it dramatically because of the way the algorithm works. And Steel Challenge is exactly the same way. The only time that you could ever lower your percentage in Steel Challenge is on your initial classification. If you were to earn it with 4 of the 8 stages, and then go back and shoot the other 8 at a lesser percentage, your average may be less than what you earned initially, but we still don't take that classification away. It's quite common in USPSA, a little less common in Steel Challenge.
No, I can see that, and I think part of that with the commonality is that with the USPSA, it sometimes takes a couple of matches before you can get classified, where a lot of times you can go to a single Steel Challenge match and earn your classification right away.
Absolutely, and in fact, even if a club is shooting the minimum of 2 of the original 8 stages mixed with some outlaw stages, you can still get classified in 2 matches or in a month's time. The idea was to be able to attain a classification quickly, and with everyone shooting 2 and most people shooting either 4 or 8 at all levels, it's real easy to get classified. I enjoy going to a match and trying to shoot under the PST as my match score, even though that doesn't earn me anything as far as the classification systems go. It allows me to see that I am adequately classified. And I did that recently, and it was a goal of mine, and I was quite pleased to do so.
Mike, let me back up real quick. You mentioned that Steel Challenge, as of this week, has 15,000 classifications or competitors that are classified. Is that correct?
It's 15,000 classifications. That does not represent 15,000 unique competitors because some people are classified in multiple divisions. In fact, those of us on this call are classified in quite a few. I'm one of the 4 people who've classified in all 13 divisions. So I represent, a little bit more of that total than some people. So I don't have the number in front of me today here from the Nationals about how many unique individuals are classified, but I know that the IT director at USPSA and Steel Challenge, Rick Brotel, is working with Zach Jones on some information that he requested recently that will tell us how many unique individuals are classified and are shooting. So we have the technology. It's just not a number that we track every week.
That's amazing growth, and I think we talked a little bit on the last podcast, and a lot of that success of the sport. I know Zach Jones posted out on his personal Facebook page about the 15,000 classification count. Zach and Donna Jones have done so much for the sport, and if you get an opportunity, this is for the audience, reach out to Zach at USPSA.org and send him just a brief note of appreciation, because he does a lot of this stuff on his personal time. And I know me and Jeff as well are very grateful for all the work that Zach has done, because it's just not, running numbers or stats at matches. He's doing a lot of coordination, helping out clubs become affiliated, helping out, individual competitors with gear and those sorts of things. He's just been such a resource for all of us.
He's so committed, in fact, that it's easy to forget sometimes that he has a regular Monday through Friday job, and he shows up at Steel Challenge matches on Wednesday and Thursday and stays through the weekend, and he's using paid time off from his real world job to help make a go of this, and he's been instrumental in the success of Steel Challenge over the last couple of years. And so I would echo that. anytime you see him, know that he's there on his own time. Even though we help him get there, he's totally doing this in addition to working a full-time job in the tech world.
Let me ask you this, Mike. There's been some feedback after our podcast when we announced the changes and after the newsletter bulletin went out from USPSA. There's some competitors out there that are expressing some concerns around they're a grandmaster today. They're over, 95% or above. And now that the peak times are changing, their new classification is going to be somewhere right around, let's just say 94% as an example. And so their classification's not going down, their classification percentage is going down. So what I mean by that is that they're still going to be competing against other grandmasters unless if they petition to go down in classification. What's USPSA's thought about that?
Wow, you would have to ask what USPSA's thought instead of my thought, because I'm just going to say buy ammo or buy a range like you did in practice.
Hey, you know what, Mike? I knew the times were coming, so I had to sell my house. It was a little bit of a tough sell with my wife, but I said, hey, look, honey, this is really what we need to do. And so I started throwing out calculations to her, and somehow I just baffled her, and she said, okay, let's do that if it makes you happy. So, yeah, I'm enjoying the new home range, and I'm working on some of my classifications right now.
I can see that you probably took an amortization table for the new mortgage and the peak stage time table with you to the closing.
I did. True story.
Yeah. No. So anyway, to answer that question, because it's a very valid question, and that is, I was just about to make A or master or GM, and now it's going to be more difficult. I want to put that into perspective. Classification systems are never a moment in time. They're made to evolve as the sport evolves. And if you look just a few years ago, the pros were still shooting in the 80s. And now we have divisions where pros are shooting 62, 63, 64. And I think we'll see a 59 in one of the low-ready divisions next year. So as that evolves, and as we all continue to chase it, the sport evolves. And if you look at Steel Challenge going from 3,000 to 15,000 classifications in just 2 years, we're in an early developmental part of what's possible when it comes to peak stage times and when it comes to world championship wins for, overall. And because of that, the classification systems have to evolve. I was quoted recently as saying, think of it like this, you're never more than a year behind. That's ideal. If you look at all of the best shooters in Steel Challenge or USPSA or even athletes in other games, and you go back 10 years, the sports always get faster. They always evolve. People who are running track and field, people who are playing baseball, the statistics have evolved to a point where athletes are constantly getting more and more out of the game, and we're no different. Our equipment's more reliable than it's ever been. Ammunition's better than it's ever been. Practice is a real thing. When I started shooting, people didn't talk about practice. People didn't talk about how to get better. People didn't share techniques. And today we have that. We have it in such a way that as long as you have access to the internet or the time to go to a major match, that you can talk to the pros. You can watch their videos. You can see. There's no secret to that. So as those sports evolve, we want to evolve classification system with them so that it's not just a moment in time. I think we can all go back and race against the times that were being set 30 years ago and beat them today. A lot of people can do that. So there wouldn't be anything special about it if we weren't constantly reaching for a higher and higher and higher goal.
Well, Mike, that's a good point, because I was fortunate enough this year to have a good showing in PCC at the match in Covington, the U.S. Steel Shoot. My time, I came in third, and my time would have been first the previous year. And to your point, just there, it's faster and faster and faster, and we have to evolve with the times. And so not everybody's going to like it, but it's going to drive everybody to get better, I think.
Indeed, it's very exciting. I enjoy seeing Cole or Ethan step up there and shoot in the 60s. Now, a little part of me dies every time I realize that I'm still in the 70s or low 80s in some divisions. But it's really neat to see that happen. And I think about, when I was a kid, Nolan Ryan was pitching for the Houston Astros, and he had a 96 or 98 mile an hour fastball. Well, everybody pitching today has a fastball that's that fast. But at that time, he was the fastest on the earth.
Yeah, well, we were fortunate enough to talk to Max, and, I went back and, being a historian of the sports that I participate in, his sub-7 Smoke and Hope was actually the first time in a major that a center fire gun went under 8 seconds on a stage. And how long has the Steel Challenge been around? 30 years plus? So
Yes,
for,
easily.
And that's just a testament not only to Max, but to say, again, times are changing, evolving. He discussed the numbers that were thrown out there when there was some big sponsors, and nobody thought that 80 was possible, and BJ's done it, and it's going to continue to be that way. And so I think the people that are, right on those, just made Grandmaster, you're still a Grandmaster. You made it. Your percentage might be lower. Well, I know a lot of people aren't going to like this, but as you pointed out, get some ammo, get on a range, get practicing, and get better.
It just sounds so simple.
I know.
There is no magic pill. It is practice. And it's interesting you talk about Cole and the upcoming segment where he talks about, dry fire and how instrumental that is. As I think about it, I have enough steel in my garage to set up all 8 stages, but I'm not getting any better with it still sitting in the garage and me sitting somewhere else. And so a little bit of work goes a long way. I practiced just a little bit this year and shot several matches and have set several personal bests myself. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I think we're seeing a lot of regular guys. I mean, this is not just about Max Michel or BJ Norris or Casey Acebio. I mean, those guys are all great. But you're seeing a lot of people that 2 years ago no one had ever heard of, and they're in the hunt at a lot of big matches.
We know there's a great little spreadsheet that Tony Martin put together with a little help from Zach Jones, and it's
the Tony Martin Fantasy League. That's what I call it. I had dinner with Tony Martin one night this week, and I said, "Hey, bro, why is the Fantasy League not up to date? You have a bad match or something?"
But again, I think the cool thing about that is you see it's not all pros. I mean, Casey's there, Jesse's there, Max is there, but so are you. So is Jason Edwards. So is Tony, Steve. I'm lucky and I'm on the list.
Absolutely.
And these are people, these are average Joes. We're not making a living at all at this sport where some of those other names are. But that doesn't mean that we can't compete. And, I mean, I think if you look at, you're shooting the 9 days of nationals right now. And Steve just got done shooting the Tennessee State. It's getting the matches. It's getting the practice. It's putting the work in. There is, like you pointed out, there is no magic pill. The other way I've heard it is there is no shooting gene. You're not born a shooter. You may have some attributes, good legs, good eyes that can help. But, there is no trigger finger that you're born with. You got to work on that.
It's very perishable, too. I notice if I take time off, that when I come back, it takes a little while to get back in that groove.
And it's frustrating when you shoot like a 10-second Smoke and Hope and you're like, I can do better than this.
Well, Mike, thank you again for being on the podcast. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I do. One thing that we'll talk about, we talked about, who's shooting scores, and we didn't exactly cover the distribution piece, but as it stands today, there are 650 out of 15,093 classifications that are Grandmaster. That represents 4% of the population as GM. There are another 850 Masters. That represents 6%. So Master and Grandmaster are the top 10% of the population, which in this case is 1,500 classifications. From there, it goes to A class, which is an 11% distribution, down to B, which is 29. C is the largest at 39%, and D behind it at 12%. So if you look at the dead center of the demographic, the dead center of the talent pool, it is the C-class shooter, followed by the B-class shooter. So those are the people who continually strive to get better. And we don't want the new peak stage times to be discouraging, because just like anything else, as you move down the scale, it has less impact. And so to those folks, I say hang in there. Nobody in that top 10% started there. We all started down in the middle in C or B class. And as you move up and try to be competitive and try to win B and C class awards at matches, consider yourself ratcheting up. You don't want to be the first C class guy for the rest of your life. I think at some point you want to move into B class. And so, that's my parting word is don't get discouraged, and don't let a 4% change discourage you from reaching a goal when that 4% change represents a fraction on each stage.
Good words,
Very
Mike.
nice.
Thank you. All right, cool. Anything else we might want to touch on?
I'm
Steve can
good.
edit all this out. You
Yeah.
feel good, Mike? Anything else you want to share?
No, that's really all I have. Like I said, we're here at the Nationals, and I've been hanging out with Brian Connolly from Hunters HD Gold, and we've been talking about Steel Challenge and talking about the calendar next year and all that we have going on. And I just really appreciate you guys staying engaged with the sport and doing what you're doing here on your podcast. And hopefully look forward to a time when we can talk about the next big thing together.
Fantastic. Well, next board meeting, if you have the inclination to say that, the senior division cutoff at 55 is the end of the match instead of the beginning of the match,
Don't do it, Mike.
I'm all for that, because the World Speed Shoot ends on my birthday this next year.
That's an interesting thing, Jeff, and maybe that was intentional. Who knows? I had someone come up to me not too long ago, and they said, Mike, the new 65-year-old super seniors are ruining the game for us really old guys.
That's
Hey,
funny.
listen, even I talked to Max one day, and I said, you're either chasing somebody or being chased. And he looked at me and he goes, that's the truth.
Yeah.
It's one or the other. And, it's nice to be the guy that's being chased, but that just means you got everybody gunning for your spot.
Hey, Mike, how's Hunters HD Gold doing down at the match? Is Brian pretty busy?
Brian is extremely busy. We've been talking, very short spurts as the traffic's down, but there have been a lot of people buying Hunters HD Gold glasses. The word's out on them. I'm
That's
personally
cool.
wearing them. I wore them in the entire match. I just finished single stack division today. I wore them the entire match, inside, outside, in the sun, in the overcast. Not only do I think that they make the edges of Steel Challenge targets pop, but they make the perfs on USPSA targets pop. I'm a big fan myself, and Brian sold a lot of glasses, but one of the things that I really appreciate about Brian is he's put glasses on our prize table. A very special thing that he's done is we've raffled off at each awards a really nice custom pair. And one of our ROs was a lucky recipient last night at the RO appreciation dinner of a pair. But there are a lot of people buying them. They're really catching on, and I'm seeing more and more Hunters HD Gold out there. And Brian's such a nice guy, and constantly working on things, thinking about the next step. And he's already committed to being with us next year, not only at the World Speed Shooting Championship, but at the USPSA High Cap Nationals in Utah. And so I think maybe he's even got his wife excited about, a Utah vacation, coupled with the match. And so that's what's going on with Brian, since you asked.
That's cool. He's a great guy.